Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. I'd like the clerk to take a roll call vote for the town council, please. Here. Here.
Here. Gary Cody. Ian Dixon. Here. Rick Warren.
Here. Here. Okay, I think the school committee, feel free to open your meeting.
Thank you. I'd like to open our meeting. Looks like 7:02. Roll call, please. Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to see if everybody would stand for a pledge of allegiance, please. Town Sergeant, if you'd lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Town Sergeant, if you could give an emergency evacuation plan, please. Okay, I'm just quickly gonna make a comment. I appreciate the school committee and the town council getting together on this. This is pretty much gonna be your show. You're gonna give us a presentation and let us know what, how we're gonna go about this, and we're gonna try to work together, but I certainly wanna work with you, so I'm gonna let you take control, and you have it, and please carry on with your presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the town council and all those involved with setting up this meeting. It's very much appreciated, and I'm very hopeful that some of the information that's been sort of in the winds will come back down to earth, and everybody will get a good idea as to what's been going on so far. I think you all have a very extensive packet in your notebook. So if everything doesn't get discussed tonight, if you have any questions, you can go back and look at some of this. I am going to turn this meeting over to Mr. Levis, or is it going to be Sarah first?
I'll start.
To actually start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to take the opportunity with everybody here just to, it's been a crazy summer, and to say the least, but I want to thank Mr. Wazika, and I'm just going to call him a town manager because that's who he is to me, and Mr. Arnett. You guys have been phenomenal working with us in so many different areas, and I just wanted to thank you guys for that. I really appreciate that. We talk about transparency and working together, and I don't know how we could work together any better, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to be brief tonight, and we hope this isn't just, there's no plan to be a lengthy meeting tonight, but we want to let you know kind of where we're at. A couple of years ago, I came and I presented to the council. We presented to the school committee. I think there were probably a couple of individuals that weren't present for this when the Department of Education came out with a change in the necessity for school construction process. And if you remember, we had also given copies of the Jacobs report that looked at a condition at the time, said we, just to get our buildings back up, not making any improvements in terms of education, but getting our buildings back up into operation condition would be about, they had said about $60 million. We believe that today is about $70 million. What we want to share with you tonight is talk about that necessity for school construction process, but really looking at the very beginning. And we understand no matter what we do, at the end of the day, it's up to the community. But I believe we all understand not only the schools, but the condition of our buildings. We have an opportunity through this process where any projects over $500,000, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, we would be eligible for up to 60%, maybe even a little bit more, depending on the components of the project. So I think that's significant. I don't know if we'll ever have that opportunity. And we're talking about improvements that would last 30, 40, 50 years. So I know as superintendent, I would be remiss and negligent if we didn't try to pursue this process. Again, at the end of the day, we understand that it's up to the citizens of Coventry. We haven't come forward. We've talked about conditions of schools. You've seen the Jacobs report. But my philosophy has always been that unless you have a solution, just to dangle the problems in front of anybody is almost abusive. But now we have an opportunity to actually pursue a potential solution. And this is a long-term solution. This would be something that would probably take place over, 10, 15, 20 years. So tonight we want to share where we've been so far in preliminary steps. You're a significant part. We need your support moving forward. We need to engage the taxpayers. The community members have to be an integral part of this process. So that's my part. Again, I want to reiterate what Ms. Patno had said in terms of, thanking you for this opportunity, and I hope we continue to have more opportunities dialogue. I want to just turn it over to our Director of Finance, Ms. Mangiarelli. She's going to talk about actually how we were even able to begin this process with a grant from the Department of Ed, and then she'll introduce Mr. Conti, who's the funds that we were able to get for technical assistance to begin this process. He's with Studio Jade, which is an architecture firm that is involved with not only the architecture around school facilities, but also the educational components. So.
Thank you. Am I on? Okay. So thank you for having us here tonight. I'm going to be brief as well. A lot of the information that you have in your packets you have seen before. So in 1C, reference 1C is the entire necessity for school construction application. That is a lengthy document. It really just walks through our requirements every step of the way. And the intent of this is to be a thorough process so that we're not just throwing money after these buildings. The intent is to have professionals come in, really do an analysis of your facilities, look at long-term planning, both just from a facility perspective as also where you want to go educationally. And it also helps build in protocols to ensure that not only are we renovating, building, whatever we may do long-term for creating these new facilities, but also building in safeguards to make sure that we allocate funds necessary to maintain them on a go-forward basis. I know that my first year here, we did submit a stage 1 application. It was rough. It was almost a miracle that RIDE approved it, but we really needed to start that process. The intent at that time was really just to hit some of the major issues that we were aware of without digging super deep. When it came time to going to stage 2, we met with the Department of Ed and said, before we try and move anything forward, despite the significant need that we have in our buildings, we really need to take a step back and slow down, bring in some professionals, and help get us through this. Obviously, finances are a concern in Coventry, and I think RIDE recognized that. They actually let us know of this technical assistance before it had even officially been rolled out. So last winter, we were given $150,000 for technical assistance for stage 1, and if there was any carryover to stage 2, which would allow us to engage an architectural firm and really start diving deep into our facility needs and also start some of that long-term planning as to where we want to go. So I believe it's 2A as your reference, the second page in. This is the unsigned agreement. I do have the signed agreement in my office if anybody wants that as well. But you'll see that this is the grant that we received from RIDE. We do have to have this expended by June 1st, 2020. We did go out to bid for stage 1 services, including the architectural component of that. Studio Jade was selected as the winner of that bid. So we have engaged with them to help us get through that stage 1 process. It's important to note that once we hit this $150,000 mark, we will have additional consultant services that need to be hired, even in stage 2 and 3, but we will also receive reimbursement of about 20%, I believe, on those services, 20% on those, above and beyond this. So really, without this infusion of funds, I think it would have been hard for this community even to start this. But with this award from RIDE, we really wanted to put our best foot forward. We've dove deep in some of our facility needs, and I think, as Mr. Levis had said, I don't think we want to be the administration that doesn't bring this forward, because we are at that point with our facilities that it would be negligent to not try and move this forward. I should also note that Coventry has lost out on housing aid reimbursement in recent years to the tune of $1.3 million by not having this completed. So right now, the only eligibility that we have for reimbursement from RIDE is our base 44%, and that is only up to $500,000 that's spent, and it can only be on health, safety, and emergency repairs, and we have to apply for that each year. We did that last fiscal year. Again, resources are tight to even hit that amount. And while we may potentially get up to 60%, we need to focus on the baseline of being 44%, and then depending on what projects we choose to move forward with, that will really impact what bonuses we become eligible for. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Conti from Studio Jade. He's going to do us give us a presentation on some of the work that we've been doing thus far, and then hopefully we can have some open dialogue about the next steps and go on to the rest of the items on the agenda.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. We will go through a robust agenda, but albeit brief. I want to make sure you know as much information as possible at this particular time. You have a copy of the handout in front of you, what I'll be showing. But I do want to talk about the RIDE school construction process. If you are not familiar with that, I want to quickly brief you on that. We will discuss the activities that we have completed to date. I'll give you a quick overview of the letter of intent and the RIDE Stage 1. Just remind you that we have developed some high-level guiding principles that we certainly could talk about more, and then discuss the path forward in community engagement that we anticipate going forward. All right. So the RIDE school construction process, as the superintendent mentioned, we are at the very beginning of a very long process. There are multiple steps in that. The first begins with submitting that letter of intent, which needs to be submitted before January 15th of 2020. Following that letter of intent, we would then begin work on the RIDE Stage 1. That is due February 17th of 2020. And in its most simplest terms, the RIDE Stage 1 is a document that defines the needs of the community. It does not define any particular project. It does not define any particular dollar amount. It simply is a document that indicates to RIDE, this is our educational facility need to support the curriculum. Once that is submitted, they then review it, and you are invited to submit a Stage 2. That Stage 2 would be due September 15th of 2020. And in that simplest term, the Stage 2 documents the solution to the need that you defined in Stage 1. Now, the Stage 2 submission is very specific. It does identify specific projects. It does identify a specific schedule, and it does identify a specific dollar amount. So if you move forward through Stage 2, by September 15th of 2020, the town, the school department, and everyone is in agreement that these are the projects that we want to do to satisfy the need. Then it would go out to a bond vote following approval by a school building authority in November of 2020. All right, and we can talk more about this process either now or afterwards. It's entirely up to you. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions as we go through this. I want to quickly talk about the activities that we've completed to date. So since working with the administration, we have started to gather some specific data, background data, boilerplate data on the school department. We've generated drawings of your existing facilities. We have started our facility condition assessment, and that is ongoing. We've conducted principal interviews just at a very high level to see what that need is within the district. And we've had some executive educational leadership visioning sessions. And I want to talk about what some of those guiding principles are at a very high level in just a minute. So as we mentioned, the first step is the letter of intent. So that letter of intent is a prescribed document. It is already written by the Rhode Island Department of Education. There's a couple things that the superintendent, for example, would certify that he would be compliant in any of the laws and regulations associated with school building construction. It requires a district map, and it requires a school building committee member list. Now, that school building committee is a prescribed list. At a minimum, it says what position a person should hold and be on this building committee, and it does allow you to have additional members. It's important to keep in mind that the building committee is really an advisory role. They will make a recommendation to the school building committee, and then subsequently the school building committee will vote and make a recommendation to the town council, and the town council will vote. So the building committee is an important body, but it is really an advisory role. It is to review what we are doing on the design side, as well as represent the interests of the town and the school committee. Following that letter of intent, RIDE will invite you to submit a Stage 1 application. There are maybe 12 or 13 components to that Stage 1 application. A lot of it is factual information that we need to collect, some regarding utilities, operating budgets, some demographics, what are the procurement approaches for Coventry. The most important part of the Stage 1 is the first part, which is the statement of interest and the project justification. That is where, as a community, you are defining the need for Coventry. So we've had some high-level executive educational leadership visioning sessions. And what we've done is look at the strengths, challenges, and opportunities of all your schools at a very high level educationally, because that will inform the need. I'm going to tell you that we've worked on your facility condition assessment. So from an infrastructure standpoint, I could tell you all of the technical things that are wrong with your building. But only the school administration can tell me what are the educational programmatic challenges that these facilities are causing. So we have engaged with them a couple of times, and we've generated some guiding principles that I will share. But I want to tell you what you could expect. So the next document is a chart. It's an example school. It is not one of your schools. But it will be important for you to visualize what those technical deficiencies will be at a very high level at each school. Our goal is to make data-driven decisions. So it's important that you understand the condition of your schools in some major categories across your entire district. It's also going to be important for you to understand where that need is in its overall timeline. And that's what that next chart is. Our assessment will be broken down into 4 priorities. Priority 1, which is immediate, which means there is a life safety issue that we have identified. And then all the way up to priority 4, which is work that should be done within 6 to 10 years. When you see these charts for each one of your school, that will influence other decisions that the school department and town council may want to consider. But again, we're in the process of gathering this data, and it is ongoing. The next chart, the next drawing, again, is not one of your schools, but it is a plan that we will generate for each school where we identify in red those spaces that are not compliant or deficient with the RIDE guidelines. Now, that does not mean that you cannot deliver a high-quality education. It's simply a benchmark. This is how we start to identify what those needs are from an educational standpoint. Perhaps we'll see that some of your schools have so much red, and when we look at the other charts, the need is so high and so immediate that perhaps your decision to do something different starts to surface, and then we can have that discussion. This is just an example of Black Rock. As I told you, we're generating base drawings for this, and these are the drawings that we'll use going forward in our documentation. I wanted to share the guiding principles that we have started to develop, again, at this high-level educational executive leadership team. And they're ones that you would expect, that they want the schools and the school department to be warm, safe, and inviting, that the facilities should be future-ready, that they should reflect the community values, that access to quality educational space is equitable across the district. Schools that have the small school feel but the large school pride. Also recognizing that the schools can be a community resource and, of course, sustainable going forward. So those are some of the guiding principles that we have developed so far. But I like to sort of wrap all of this up with what I call responsible innovation. Everything we do from here out really is a balance. We have to balance project scope, project size, the programmatic needs with funding limits, logistical constraints, bonding capacity, other needs, other town needs, other school department needs. I can only assure you that through the entire process, we always keep in mind that it must be a balance. We may generate needs that far exceed your means, but that's what stage one is. Tell us what you need. Stage two is where we collectively define what that solution is. And I could tell you that the solution will not be to address all your needs. No district has ever been able to do that, nor is expected to. But it is a thorough and iterative process that we have just started. So going forward, the first thing is to establish this building committee, submit the letter of intent, and you will be invited to submit your RIDE Stage 1. And what we'd like to do is engage the community and solicit their input at each school. So we will go to all of your schools and have a community engagement event where we have a series of activities that we facilitate to draw out of them what they think the needs are. We continually, in parallel, engage the educational leadership team to understand what their educational vision is. And then work with the building committee to sort of align the entire project. Bring to the building committee what we heard from the community, what we heard from the educational leadership group, and present to you what we think the needs are, so that we're all in alignment. Then we share those needs back out with the stakeholders, with the community events, and then move forward with submitting the Stage 1. So it's important to remind you, because many people ask, the submission of a RIDE Stage 1 does not commit you to any type of bond, does not commit you to any project, does not commit you to any schedule. It is non-committal. But RIDE wants you to demonstrate that you have thoroughly vetted the process for generating the need. so that you could move forward with defining that solution. So I'm going to take a seat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil, for doing that. I think that kind of, well, I'd ask if anybody has any question. I know there's a lot of information here. I think, as I open, basically saying that I can speak as superintendent. I believe the school committee feels this way. I hope you feel this way, that in terms of a stage one, it's assessing what the needs of our schools are. You know, in the past, we've had like the Jacobs report that we didn't have a lot of involvement. We walked around. This is something where we have some involvement. We have resources that, like Sarah said, without this $150,000, we wouldn't be able to do this. So I think as the leaders of this community, as the chief educational leader, I think I have an obligation to at least go through the process to look at our buildings for what they are and to lay this on the table for the community. And I think that's what Mr. Conti was saying, is that there's no commitment other than we're demonstrating that there's a need, which we know there's a need, but this is the process we have to follow. I think the next part that we were going to talk about tonight, unless there's questions or comments. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Bill, thanks for the presentation. When we get, and this is further down the line, but obviously we're going to have a number and we're going to have a scope of things to do. So I'm assuming that's going to get phased over time. We'll have sort of a master plan concept and then roll it out in individual phases. How long does the stage 2 approval last from RIDE, and how long are we expecting those state funds, those reimbursements to sustain? Are we talking that they'll have 60%, let's say, prospective reimbursements for the next 10 years? Or is this something we come up with a master plan and by year 5, if we don't have our phasing done, we're going to lose those reimbursements?
So the reimbursements have a sort of a sunset time, depending upon the type of reimbursement, or I'm sorry, the type of incentive. They're varying incentives with varying percentage amounts, all with specific time. There has been floated an idea that there would be another $250 million statewide bond vote to extend those incentives even farther. I can't speak to whether that will actually happen or not. I do not know the exact length of time that a RIDE Stage 2 approval stays in effect once it is received. I will find out for you.
Says the letter of intent is due. Turn that on for the. Thank you. It says in the on page 8 of the I think it's part 1 that the letter of intent is due January 15th, 2020 for the fall 2020 approval timeline. So it looks like the letter of intent needs to be written or approved by the school building committee, I think, because you can't really have the critical mass. I mean, the school building committee kind of forms the critical mass for things. So I got a really helpful grid from John Anderson.
We've shared that with everybody.
Yeah, and it's whoever did it did a really nice job. So, oh, it was Luke. That's right.
Yeah.
Someone told me that. And just thinking about it, I mean, it's past September 15th. We really have, with holidays and everything, we have a pretty tight timeline to form that committee. So, and then you have to actually draft the letter of intent, which I think can be pretty.
It's prescribed. The letter of intent.
It's prescribed, but you have to do something in order to send the letter out. You have to discuss something that you want to do, right?
So the letter of intent is actually on page 30 in this application, which is reference 1C. So it's actually, the letter is truly written for us, other than dropping in our information. The page 31 is the prescribed building committee, so that is the minimum number of people / positions that are needed for the building committee. And then it is signed, so it says by authority. So I actually don't know if that needs to be, I don't believe that needs to be signed by the building committee. That's actually the authority of the town with the list of the building committee there. So, and I just want to note that this can be submitted before January 15th. I know that this seems like a haul to get this building committee approved. We did start talking about this over the summer. So I would like to think that we can ultimately move this forward. And I do just want to remind that we were given the grant by RIDE with the intent that we would go through this process.
And if I could, so when I created this matrix, I cross-reference obviously between the RIDE construction regulations 1.08 and the homeroom charter, which is sections 4.07. And so I have here, you see the color coding and highlighting on where we have overlaps between what RIDE requires and what the town sort of states out requires. And then obviously the way the RIDE regulations are crafted, we need what they prescribe, but they also say that we defer back to our own homeroom charter or ordinance, whatever. So obviously that has to be integrated into this. So it's that interpretation, and I don't know if Mr. Gorham has agreed with this or not on my interpretation.
Well, it just says that the school regulations, which are promulgated by RIDE, not the General Assembly, says that it must, at a minimum, consist of 8 people, and then it shows who the 8 people are. But I think it means that you can appoint other people, especially if your charter requires that you appoint other people. And the town charter, and that's why I liked your matrix, because it does acknowledge all the others that probably need to be appointed. So anyway, I was only saying what I said because it seems like it's a long way away, but it's really not, to get the committee to organize, because that's all.
Now, my understanding is you already have all the positions ready to be filled on the RIDE requirements, correct?
So, yes, and what we did is, and we had conversation, obviously we were looking for the September 15th, and we recognized that. I mean, a big driving force factor for me is that, I think Sarah stated, but it's going to be loud and clear, because in the past, you know, we weren't here, and not pointing the finger, but the process that was followed, $1.3 million was not received from the town for housing aid. That's a lot of money. You know, when we're talking about not having capital for anybody for 12 years and then getting $200,000, which is very significant. We're very appreciative, because even if it's a symbolic, it's the commitment from the council is so appreciated. But we can't, you know, like that 1.3, I'm sure it leaves a bad taste in your mouth when we walk around to see that significant amount of money. This gets us into the game. We're not saying we're even scoring here, but it gets us into the game. And that's what we're asking for, the support to get us in so that we can at least lay out with the technical assistance. My concern is if we don't, we may have to pay back, because we're going to pay the money. We may have to pay back $150,000, which is nobody wants to do. But you know, the other part is I feel like, you know, we'd be negligent not to lay out the landscape and say, hey, this is where we're at. I think it's important for the council to know that, you know, we had a challenging situation this summer, but our middle school, you know, we received, the insurance company came in and they went through every single classroom to clean every classroom because of mold. But we could be in a situation, we're still pulling 55 gallons of water they're getting out through humidifier in the back portion every other day. 55 gallons. There's a lot of issues. What I'm saying is, knowing that, and that's just one little piece, knowing the condition, I think, you know, on our part, it would be negligent not to at least move forward to be able to lay down everything that we know is, about our facilities. And this process here, like I said, we slowed down the process because we recognize that there's what the charter says and what the ride says are not congruent. So to allow that opportunity, and like I said, I really appreciate the fact that that chart that Mr. Murray put together, because I think it combines the both. But we can move this forward, but we really need to get your support at least to move forward, and we have to start engaging the community. We have some community members that have been participated in some of these sessions. Mr. Price is here, who's an engineer, but also had given some input. We have some other individuals that had given input. But again, tonight is just to really stress the importance of this process. And the next part of this agenda was really to talk about the building committee. Based on that chart, we think, we agree, we believe that chart kind of blends the best of both two. The big difference in there is it says, in RIDE says that the superintendent's a voting member, and I believe in the chart here, the superintendent is not a voting member unless, or maybe not there was unless, maybe you brought that up, Mr. Anderson.
Good evening. I've spoken to Mr. Gorham about it, and I think that Mr. Murray has provided a template that would work. The only rub and the only true inconsistency, if you follow Mr. Murray's template, is that RIDE says that the superintendent shall have a vote, and the charter says that the superintendent shall not have a vote. One way to avoid that problem is simply that the superintendent won't vote unless in the event of a tie, and we'll cross the bridge at that time as to whether or not he can vote. I will say that I am working at the present time with another school building committee that has already probably spent $35 million. In Pawtucket, they've completely gutted 2 large schools and completely replaced them. They're working on placing a 3rd school now. And everything seems to come together in the sense that people want to work together, people want to contribute, people want it to be something positive. And there has not been, the type of dissension where everything comes down to a single person or like that. I think, again, Mr. Murray has provided us with a wonderful roadmap, and I think it's just a matter then of populating it with the missing people.
So, just a quick question. It says that the committee, the regulation that's in the green part of Mr. Murray's matrix up at the top, it says you have to submit the names. In other words, I think appoint. Under our charter, the town council appoints. So,
And again,
I guess
what
there's
I'm hoping is that we can collaborate and come up with people that everybody trusts.
right.
And if we can come up with a list of people that everybody trusts, then the council can approve them, the school committee can approve them, and everyone will be happy.
Right. It just says that it's it's formed in accordance with the district's local charter. So
So, Mr. Gorham, what do you suggest to move forward? Let's cut to the chase, just not being rude, but how do we, in the way you view it, are you suggesting the town council appoint each member, including the designated members that are required by RIDE?
I think that's what the regulation says. It says that
I don't know if I can't
the
speak,
local
but
now the council might be able to, collaborate and make the appointments with the school committee. I cannot imagine that they wouldn't make appointments without consulting the school committee. But the way the regulation reads, it says it's formed in accordance with the provisions of the district's local charter. And all I'm saying is that the district's local charter is the town charter, and the town charter says that the town council appoints. That's all I'm saying. I'm noting it, I'm getting it out on the table, so if you want to talk about it, you can, but that's what it says.
I don't have a problem with with us collaborating and getting people. First of all, there's not a lot of people that want to volunteer their time. Let's face it, it's true. I mean, so I have a problem getting together, but obviously the charter does state the council does appoint it. When we first heard about it, that the school committee was appointing the whole building committee, I was a little set back because it wasn't following the charter. But I have no problem sitting down with you and coming up with 8 names that we can all agree on. And obviously we wanted input on it, we need to come up with 8 names. Right now, we don't have 8 names of people that want to volunteer. So there's absolutely no problem. My point, I don't know what the rest of the council will pull, but I'm sure that, we can sit down and come up with people that are willing to work on this.
I think a fair compromise is the people that they need based on RIDE, if they make those names, and you make the choices on those,
Will you approve it?
and you approve it, and then we have to name the 5 that you have to name as part of it, as well as.
And if we don't get 5, we can go to you and say, hey, we need some more people. Who else wants to volunteer? I'm fine with that. We need people to volunteer. So I don't think working together is going to be an issue. I really don't. And not in my eyes. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks. The council.
I don't see a problem.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we want the final approval, but we need to get going on this. Really, really do. And we don't want this to be a hold up. And like I said, I talked to the town manager, and we don't have a whole big pile of applications. People want to volunteer for anything in the town, to be honest with you. And we're going to be pushing in the next several council meetings to try to get more people involved.
We currently have 3 applicants that have put in for it. One of which came that you. Yeah, we're going to have another push. We're going to try and. I mean, if you could put anything out in your list server as far as the residents that are interested in volunteering, getting involved, the more the merrier on the applications that we can get, and then it gives us more to choose from.
May I interject? Mr. Levis, I believe we received 7 applications when we asked for people to. Could you forward those applications to the town side, please? Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be good. I think we won't have any issue with just working together on that, and we'll get moving if we can get the applications in. And we want people who are really committed to this, not just being on a committee. We want people that are really gonna, that have the heart and soul of this and want to work for us, because this is a difficult subject, and we're all for discussing it and seeing, but let's keep. I have a question just concerning the previous one, because we are pretty much covering the last item on the agenda right now. But can I just ask you, how long are you planning to take to complete your figures and evaluation of the different schools? And I don't know if it was mentioned in the presentation you gave. I know you're in the process, but how long should that take before it's finished?
So following the timeline, the stage 1 is due February 17th. That is the last day that we can carry this in and submit it. We need to work backwards from that date, because there will be actions on the school building committee. School building committee will say, we are satisfied with the application for RIDE stage 1. Then it will go to the school committee or the town council. Doesn't really matter which one comes first, but there will be an official vote by the school committee that says we accept the stage 1 and are going to submit it. The town council will also have to take that stage 1 and say, yes, we agree to submit it, keeping in mind what it entails, which is only ephemeral stuff about the need. That document is going to be several hundred pages long. You will say, and the school committee will say, well, we need time to review this. Is that weeks? Is that a month? If we start looking at when we're going to need approvals to submit in February, we may need those approvals in January, which means then we need to submit to you maybe sometime in December, which means we need to engage with the community now in October, feverishly work through November to give it to you in December to review and approve for submission. So it is an aggressive schedule that we are on, that we're going through right now.
I understand, but when will your particular evaluations of each individual school needs and present be?
That would probably happen by the middle of October. By the middle of October, we do not want to start the community engagement until we have finished the technical review of the buildings, so that that information is shared so people have that in their mind as they're talking about their schools.
I mean, obviously, time is of the essence in this.
Yes.
Get moving on this, so
Yes.
I see it, I get it. Good, that's answered my question, yeah, thank you.
Mr. McGee,
Yes,
I have a question.
yes, absolutely.
I hope this is not a diversion, but I was reading the packet, this is page 33 of Improving Rhode Island's Public Schoolhouses, and it said, "The applicant shall own the site of an approved project or be in the process of acquiring or have a reasonable expectation of owning the site." So the question is this, who is the applicant for this work? Because the town owns the sites on which the schools sit. So my question is, technically speaking, who is the applicant for this project? Is that correct?
I think we have the care.
It's the school, under state law, it's the school committee. School committee has care, control, and custody. You have legal title.
We have legal title.
But the operation, but care, custody, and control is in Title 16, invested in the school
Okay.
department.
So even though we do own the site,
That's correct.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on who was the applicant for this project. Thank you.
Bend your mics down, please. You're bending the mics up. No, the tip itself, yeah.
Seems to get worse.
There we go.
Good? I don't
Now
know.
you know I don't like doing this.
Mr. Anderson, I just have a question. You said in the ride requirements for the superintendent, he has voting rights. Where is that in here? Because I couldn't find that.
Sure, it's in, I brought with me the permanent ed regulations, I have to do a copy but it's in Bride Regulation 200-RICR-20-05-4.1. Subsection 2B.
That's a lot of sections.
We'll give you a copy.
My goodness. It's like the IRS code.
Because it's a big deal. It's a lot of money that they wanted. They want to know what's going on.
What does it say, John?
I will read what it says exactly. The school building committee must, at a minimum, consist of 8 people, including the superintendent of schools, at least one member of the school committee, the local official responsible for building maintenance, a representative of the office or body authorized by law to construct school buildings in the municipality, the school principal from the subject school, a member who has knowledge of the educational mission and function of the facility, a local budget official or member of the local finance committee, and at least one member of the community with architectural, engineering, and/or construction experience to provide input relative to the effect of the project on the community and to examine building design and construction plans for reasonableness.
I have one more question. When you were just reading that, I'm sorry, Karen.
Yeah,
You said the principal of the subject school.
I said,
What did you?
a member who has knowledge of the educational mission and function of the facility.
The principal.
No, she's right. It does say the school principal.
I'm sorry, yep, I need to read one back. The school principal from the subject school.
From the subject school, so we have in here Alan Sean Feinstein and Western Coventry. So are those the two schools that we would be looking at?
No, so when we actually rolled that out to all principals, to anybody that wanted to apply, we have to, with the letter of intent, submit a building committee list. But if you look at the end of the letter, it also says, we'll notify authority within 20 calendar days of any changes to the membership of the duties of said committee. So let's say hypothetically, and please jump in if I misspeak, that the only school that we are touching is Western Coventry, then we have that representative on there. But should we decide that we are only going to touch Hopkins Hill, and again, jump in if I'm incorrect, we have the ability to put in writing to RIDE that we are going to make a change in that principal position to properly reflect that. But we have to have a principal listed as part of this building committee that was submitted.
I just didn't know if you had already chosen these two schools.
I think that that's something that we want to be really crystal clear on this, because I think that is a misconception. There have been no final decisions, no final plans, no final dollar amounts. This has truly been a fact-finding summer of gathering information about our facilities, high-level conversations about where we want to go. And I think a lot of this also is in response, if we all remember the last two budget meetings, financial town meetings, both years, it was crystal clear that the one thing that we were not addressing as a community or as elected officials and members of administration was the condition of our facilities. That was very loud and clear at the last 2 years worth of budget sessions. So I think in addition to the condition of our facilities, with the assistance of the $150,000, this was our intent to start that ball rolling. But there have absolutely been no final decisions made, and I think that on this administration side, we've worked very well with the town administration. I think last year, regardless of what happened community-wide, these two sides of the table came together. So I would hate to think that there would be any misconception that we would be going forward without input and collaboration with the town administration and the town council.
I have one other question. Luke, I know you put this together, but with the charter requirements, it's 5 electors, and there's only 4 listed.
Well, there's one covered up on top as well. It's under one of the joint ones.
So you're referring to the community members, the outside community members?
5 electors.
So 5 electors, I actually counted, if you look at the blue line, so we need 1 per ride. So again, that could be council, this was not decided. We had good applicants, and so that's why we were assuming like we might be able to put forward 1 of the 5. Again, that would still have to be approved by council if that's the way it goes. We have a number of very qualified applicants, which is great, and I think we're willing, I can't speak for the rest of the school committee, we're willing to work. So.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
I don't know why.
We're probably better not even use the mics, I think.
Is that better?
I mean, I don't
So-
see why we can't. I mean, we don't need the things.
Yeah,
I
so-
think we're all loud enough.
So I guess,
is it
you know,
being
the
broadcast?
answer to the
Yeah.
question, it wasn't to
They'll
assume
pick up.
anything, it's just to show that there's overlap there, that it could be schools, it could be, that is one required position. The rest of them are required for our homework charge.
Yeah, in short, it's rows 8 through 12, not 9 through 12. Row 8
Correct.
should
Yeah.
count as one of the committee members.
But we have the overlap, so as you see, anything in the blue was an overlap, so.
Okay, so I have another question.
Sure.
Number 8 in the blue.
Yep.
You had already, I thought in one of the paperworks when you had your school committee meetings
back page of the
at
book.
the schools.
School committee meeting. Oh,
Yeah, you listed school committee meetings at 8:30 in the morning. Posted school committee meetings.
It wasn't posted school committee. Are you hearing about work sessions?
Well, I guess they turned into work sessions, but they were school committee meetings. But on the back,
Hold on,
it
wait,
said.
wait. Because I'm not aware of any school committee meetings that I was at.
Are you talking about the Jade work sessions?
So what was
higher level-
posted wasn't an open meeting. I don't even think it was open meeting posted because there was no quorum.
Okay,
There was
I
an
thought
open,
it
so
was
there
just
was, my
posted.
understanding, just so we're clear, there was a open
Visioning
meeting
meetings.
posted by Jane and the school.
We posted those to make them open, and that that way there would be no open meetings violation in case.
Can you turn, I can't hear you.
All
Can
right.
you turn that off? I mean, we just can't.
You're talking about our work sessions.
Oh, well, I'm just going by I got it off the Secretary of State. It says school
Yeah,
committee meeting.
I think
It doesn't say work sessions.
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah, I
that's,
think
I'm
the
just
idea
saying.
on that, it was a work session. The idea being, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if more than one school committee or council member decided to join in, then we didn't create an unfair quorum.
That's
Is that correct?
Okay,
exactly the reason.
All right, well,
In
I
other
don't know
words,
the
so-
reasoning.
I don't want people to feel like we had this meeting.
Well, I'm just going by what was posted. I don't know the reasoning behind it.
And I will,
that's all.
again, explain the reasoning behind it, and it's the advice I give to the school committee all the time, is that if 3 or more of you come together, almost divided,
It's a quorum and you have a meeting.
right, so we post events like this, just like we, our strategic planning, every one of those sessions was posted on the Open Meetings Act, in case 3 members of the school committee chose to come, even though they weren't required to come.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off. Was there a question?
Yes, I do. On the back of that, the papers, it says that you have Alita Hall. She's the parent building committee, but she's not listed on here.
Well, again, I don't think any decisions have been made. We had a preferred applicant that we would have chosen, but again, we wanted to back into this, I think, with council to say, is she a suitable candidate? Are we even going to be,
Well, she
I
would
guess,
meet your-
allowed to put forward one member from the RIDE standpoint? So I guess
Yeah.
that's what we're here to discuss.
Yeah, she would meet the right.
Ms. Bacon, just so you know, when we back,
You don't need it.
when we backed this up, we asked the individuals that had applied, because the town manager sent out applications, and we sent out the applications. So we asked them to apply to follow the charter, to the, using the application for the building committee. So I know that she's one of the applicants. I know Mr. Price is one of the applicants that put in for that. And they were people that had applied when we originally went out.
And just to add on to that, we did have some discussion at our school committee meeting about garnering applicants, right? And my words were, I want to cast the net wide. And so the administration actually they went out and posted, I believe, to all our listservs, really put the word out to the community. I believe Mr. Wazika has also put out a wide net. We are really, truly trying to get not just the typical in-the-box people who constantly are drafting these types of things. I mean, we're open, I think, and I can't speak for the rest of the committee members, but to really get a wider community engagement in this process, as opposed to kind of having the same people we always have, get some really qualified, high-end people who know construction and building, that could contribute to the process. So I hope we can get into that.
There is no building committee until the council appoints the building committee.
And even though that was put on that title, is that what's getting you upset, that there was actually?
Well, I'm not getting upset,
next
I'm
to
just
her
asking
name?
questions.
No, I understand that, but.
I'm not upset by this.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
No, I got the feeling that you brought her up because it says building committee and that's the position.
Yeah.
I don't think that was decided.
No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
No,
don't
I
think
just
it was
wanted to,
decided
so
at all.
this process for us actually started, I believe, at the end of June is when we first started, end of June, early July, no, I think it was end of June.
End of June, I think it was.
And I want to be clear, because while it wasn't done correctly, when we submitted the first stage one, the very first time I was here, the council actually approved the RIDE prescribed building committee. It was
We didn't
actually
follow the charter.
correct. And so, and I, in full disclosure, did not even go there. Mr. Wazika had stepped in when we started to go through this the second time. So in following what had been done the first time around, when we got this prescribed requirement, knowing that at a bare minimum, we had to have those positions filled, on our end, we began working to fill those. And I had reached out to Mr. Wazika and said, I also need town council representatives. I need either you or John to represent us. And then that is when Mr. Wazika said, well, wait a second, I just looked at the charter and we also have to do this. But so there wasn't an intent to circumvent council rules and start going off on our own building committee. This really was actually rolling at the same exact time because we were starting to get going with
I'm
the
not
intent
insinuating that,
that
I was just
September
asking,
was the
that's
goal.
all
Yeah,
right,
no,
her
I-
name wasn't on
I'm
it,
just
that's
trying to
all.
give you a context as to how we got here.
Yeah, no,
That's all.
I think I get, I can certainly see the confusion because she's listed as a parent / building committee. Was this something Studio J had made?
Well, yeah, it's on the
Based
back.
on the- So I think it was just a matter of the title.
I was
That's a
just-
fair statement. I would have been confused too. So, basic answer is we don't have.
No, we don't. The school committee doesn't appoint the building committee either, it's town council, obviously, but we didn't vote on appointing building committee members because per our bylaws, that authority rests with the chairperson. So it would be inappropriate for us to vote anyway, but there was a discussion about that particular applicant
So what
during the meeting.
I'd like to see then is if we can, forward any of your applications with Mr. Wazika, we can probably have a special meeting with us and the council, go over the application, you guys can discuss who the best candidates are, and bring them forward. I'm fine with that. I'm sure that once we get the chance to look at the resumes and discuss it, we'll work with you on that. It needs to get done ASAP, so, if you guys can do that, and we have a few applicants, and here again, Monday night's meeting, I'm gonna, ask people to get involved, more. And so if we get any other applicants, that's great, but I think, we have to get moving on that, and we're fine with that.
What's the date we need to have that list for?
January 15th.
Yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
building,
No,
the building.
The real date that we
Oh.
need.
So backtracking.
building
so
committee.
I obviously have
That's sooner.
Some applicants, we're gonna cast in that. And what would be the next reasonable just to hold ourselves accountable. Obviously, we're already into getting into October.
We already got a meeting set for Monday, so that's out.
Right,
So you need
so that's out.
2 weeks from now.
If we push this the next meeting in 2 weeks, we'll have the applicants, we can do the interviews that day and an executive prior to, even if we've got to make it a longer executive, do it, and we can make those appointments at that. So we could conceivably, if everybody's willing to push it, we can get it done in another 2 weeks.
So what date is that?
Top of my head, I'll have this.
2 weeks from Monday.
I'm gonna roughly say
September 23rd, Monday meeting, and then a week from that would be September 3rd.
Is that a reasonable timeframe, though? You know, I mean.
It is. I mean, Luke, we've got some of the applicants. You've got some of the applicants. You guys know who you want. You're looking at that. We can sit down next week, Monday or Tuesday, and sit down to come up with everything that you guys want. We'll work on ours. We've got the applications, and we'll get it in. We need to get it done. We can't play around with this, so let's just get it done. We can make it happen, Luke.
Can we have just one conversation at a time? Because I really can't hear what half's going on. So if we can have a little decorum, have one conversation, we can all gather the information, valuable information everybody has to say. Thank you. Okay, but please take your time. I'll give you time. Look at it and say it out loud or whatever you want to do. But we can't have 4 other conversations going on at the same time.
The next meeting of the school committee at the town council in October is the 14th, which I believe is Columbus Day. So I think it could be on the 15th instead, aren't we?
15th, yes.
15th, it's October 15th.
Which we have Tuesday instead.
Yeah, it is. Secondly, I would like to make a recommendation that when resumes for members of the public are reviewed, that we give some consideration to try to have someone who would represent each of the 5 districts.
Providing we get members from each of the 5 districts, that's absolutely fine with me.
Provided
It's
we
just,
do get it.
but would really like to take into consideration the highest qualified people for this. Besides, just represent. We'll do our best to get from every district. Hopefully, every district people apply. And are qualified. But that's certainly not a problem on my end.
I mean, if every council member could talk to 1 or 2 of the people that they think in their district would be a good rep and try to get them to do the application, that'd be great. And that way we could, but we've got, if you say you've already got 7 others that we don't have, and there's 3 that we've got, I'd like to get some more in. I mean, we did a 1-month push on this, and we get 3. Yes, ma'am.
On the town website, it said it expired on the 31st of August. Could we update?
Yep, we're gonna update it. We're gonna put it back out on Facebook, and actually, we're gonna push it on all of our Facebook sites as well, DPW and all of it. We're gonna go all the way around on it. So, yes, and we'll update that tomorrow, and I'll also bring it to the top of the page so it's visible to everybody right away.
And I'm also going to make a comment, a public comment. I mean, I had president's comments on Monday night's meeting, trying to encourage people to get involved and to have a list of all different boards and commissions that are open. So
Could I also suggest that this is going to be a process that's going to be moving quickly, so these folks it'll be appointed fairly soon, and this is going to be a lengthy process. I think folks do need to know this isn't going to be something they're going to be sitting on for maybe 12 weeks and they're going to be done. This is going to be lengthy.
One of the other things with our charter too, Mrs. Bacon, is if you look at our charter, and this I'm wondering how this is going to come. Every project requires a new building committee. So I mean, once this is done, and then we start going into the individual buildings or different. So yeah, this could be a little.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This would only last through stage 2, and then we
Right,
have
and
to
then-
appoint on a building basis.
Right, exactly.
So we're probably looking to next year at least.
Yeah, but I think folks need to understand the expectations that it is, this is going to be.
It should be about a year's process that they're going to need to be on it and be able to make the meetings.
And we can state that when we interview with them, absolutely. It's stated prior to, so they know what they're applying for. Absolutely.
We can throw it on
So
there.
with that scenario, we'd have a committee appointed by October 15th.
We'll do our best.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
with the scenario that they're doing it, but now, at that point in time, when would you be looking to have your, have the meeting of that? Who, they're going to elect a chair, I would think, but somebody's going to, bring it together, and I would think that, is that you're going to be doing, Craig?
Yeah, I would think we would pull it together. I mean, I'd have to reasonable time with the calendar, but like within maybe 10 days.
Yeah.
At
So
least
that
within
would
10 days,
be
and
one of
that
the
would align with-
expectations, obviously, this,
Right.
we're appointing you, and you're gonna start these meetings ASAP.
Right.
Because the other work is going on as this continues anyway. You're doing your research, so that's not, we just need to get this application in, get the building committee up, so we've got so moving forward, we've got the time to get it done if we move at this pace, so we'll get it done.
Just so I'm clear, so the letter of intent only, for that process, the only thing we need is actually the designation of the building committee. We don't need anything from the building committee. So the day after we appoint, if we have everything set, we can submit that letter, correct? Correct. So we should have that, if all goes well. We'll have
But as you were talking now for February 20th, you're gonna need, that again, so they'll have to start reviewing
I know.
documents for long before that.
I know, I guess.
That's kind of where I was going.
Exactly, by February.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, by February, they have to have the decisions made, so really, it's not waiting until January.
No, that's exactly where I was going with it.
Yeah, I agree.
That they start reviewing whatever document you have at ASAP.
Plus, Mr. Conti said that he wanted to start the community outreach to the different schools in October. So we'll be getting like a big break right at the end.
Yeah, I could see the first building committee meeting being around the end of October.
Right.
And then there's probably one in November, probably one in December, one in January. And then we'll work backwards to make sure we can get on the docket for the required approvals for the February submissions. I'll work with the administration to get our calendar sort of in line a little bit, so you'll have that information as well.
So I'm looking at the schedule here. We pretty much covered most areas. I think now our next important step is get this building committee formed. We've discussed to establish a school committee. We discussed our next steps, meeting schedules and so on. And we got a list of, when you have to have your letter of intent and all that in. So I don't know. Are there any other questions? Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Luke and I was just asking him about, under the letter of intent, page 8, it just says LEA will obtain building inspections or notify responsible parties to determine that the school buildings conform to appropriate state law and regulation by August 1st. Has that already been done? Because we're past August 1st.
So I could tell you that August 1st is not tied to the two different timelines that they have now provided.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So the August 1st was likely associated with a letter of intent submitted on August 15th, basically saying that it is as current as possible, there's no deficiencies in our building. So if we're looking to submit our letter of intent by January 15th, by January 1, they will want to make sure that that the buildings are compliant. Now, the fact that they are being occupied right now, that, I tend to believe that they are compliant. It's the reason why they put the October 1st, because it's during the summer. Something could have happened during the summer and the buildings are not habitable, but that's not the case. Students are in school now.
Yeah, I was just asking because they provided the 2 different dates all throughout, and this one just had August 1st. They didn't give the second date, so I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, is there any other questions anybody has on council? Kathy, I don't know if you got anything else? I mean,
I just have one, because we didn't talk about, coordination moving forward. We have everyone at the table, which is a feat itself, right?
yes, it is difficult.
I had made a suggestion, I believe, we had talked briefly about this, is having, we know we have the normal school updates every month. Once we get this going, the possibility of one of the 2 designated school committee members that would be on the building committee giving regular updates on alternate meetings. So therefore, it'd be a once-a-month update specific on the necessity for school construction.
I don't have a problem with that.
Chairperson of the building committee.
For the chair, I would think that'd be up to really the building committee. I was thinking school committee only because we're the elected officials that really should be, we're the ones who are gonna be in the budgets, we're the ones who, so.
Well, you can incorporate it into your school committee report. I mean, if it's just gonna.
But the thinking that we're putting a focus going forward, not just on the generals of the school operations, but I think this is a very important effort, and, it deserves direct attention.
I mean, I don't have an issue with that. Once we get the committees all formed, and that's fine. I love to be updated and see how things are going. That's fine, yes.
What Luke was saying, keeping everyone informed, and I don't know if the school and the town would be willing to do this, but we put on each town website and the school website these documents.
Sure.
show the process, show who the building committee is, show what documents are being sent, so all these documents are right there for the folks.
We'll put
to
these
see.
on tomorrow as well. We'll update the other thing and put these on
Everything
tomorrow.
else, when the letter of intent gets submitted, everything that goes, it's on there. This way everyone can see what's going on.
Yeah.
The police department, on their website, they have a dedicated page to the building project, with plans and documents, and it's very helpful when you're trying to find.
Yep, nope, not a problem.
We could do that too.
Yeah.
We want to keep the public, well aware, that's fine, I'm no problem with that.
And, especially if you have to go to stage 2 and you want to get people engaged, maybe when folks see this, you may get more folks that would like to get involved.
Just as a suggestion, though, I think we should link from one to the other, because if we stop putting stuff, you stop putting stuff, and it's not consistent, we have an issue. So we should do one, and we'll just do a link from the other page. I don't care which way we do it. That way, we've got one set of stuff out there, and not two that may or may not always be in sync, causing more problems. So
Okay.
we can do it that way.
There was a suggestion that there needs to be an alignment with the due dates and times when town council has to approve some document in our meeting schedule. So I'm going to suggest that you put together your timeline as quickly as possible, coordinate with the town manager as to what are the dates for the town council meetings, so that we don't miss any deadlines, because it'll be very easy to do so.
And so now, the next step would be the town manager and the superintendent get together and let's get these applications going. Yes, absolutely.
Let's do lunch.
Okay, also, with the plan, in the discussion we were just having, is that you, with the school principal, okay, that if it entails one school, what happens if we're entailing a number of schools, or if one project ends and now we've got 2 or 3 schools? Are the projects going to be included in one thing, or each one's going to be broken out separately? Because if they're broken out separately, we have to appoint a new building committee for every one. I mean, we're now creating another problem for ourselves.
Well, I can respond to that by saying that Ryder has been very comfortable with the fact that Pawtucket, which has 17 school buildings, has one committee and one principal, and that's the way.
It makes sense, but that's why we were talking about changing principles and.
They work on multiple schools at the same time in Pawtucket.
Okay, great.
Yeah, as you've worked on that, I'm sure people have kind of come and gone at
Yes.
you can make that over time.
Sure, you can make the changes. How long has that project been going on now, John?
Pawtucket, 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure people will be on and off, but
Already.
I didn't want to have to, again, as projects
That's
change,
correct.
I don't want to see something all of a sudden, okay, now we got to start another one. Yeah, I'm sure in the plan, the overall long-term plan, it will be out there again. Now, along with this committee, are there time, do they require any time constraints? In other words, usually when we name particular committees, there may be particular terms that are involved. Is it strictly due to the project?
I believe so, and I think Ms. Bacon, to me, I think that's one of the most important points, is that this isn't gonna be like a 3-month, come and have coffee and donuts a couple of times. It's gonna be a long-term commitment.
Right. So, but normally when we name, committees, in other words, there may be a specific term
I'm
for.
going to make a suggestion, and it's what Pawtucket does, and it's in the same term of office as the appointing authority in Pawtucket as the school committee, and they run them as the same length of time as the school committee.
Okay.
Which in Pawtucket is every 2 years.
That would be-
But I think it is important to tell people what they're getting into and how long we're asking for a commitment from them.
Okay, really appreciate, us getting together and talking about this, and we got a lot of work to do. I wanted to sit and talk. I'm a realist. We got a lot of work ahead of us. It's gonna be difficult, it's gonna be really difficult. But let's get our first steps done. Let's move forward. I wanna keep a positive note on it, not the negativity about it. So this is our first step. So, thank you guys for, having this meeting. I know it's difficult to get everybody together, we all have lives and it's tough. We have enough meetings going on, so, if there's no other comments on the town council behalf, I'm for a motion to adjourn.
So we'll.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Okay, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.